Hey, everybody. We're here. Good morning. Hopefully, you had a wonderful morning. Hopefully, your morning routine was nice and solid. If it wasn't, what's the 1% that you can do differently tomorrow to gain a different result, right? You don't want to get bogged down with what could have been, what didn't happen, all of that stuff, right? That gets in there and mucks everything up and makes us feel defeated, or brings us to a place of feeling defeated. I shouldn't say that it makes us feel defeated. It puts us in that place that we choose. So we can choose a different place. So that's how we can be a little bit more intentional with our experiences and what happens with that. So today, this morning, I'm going to talk about cholesterol. It's a concern for lots and lots of people. And so I wanted to get in there and discuss it a little further. So higher cholesterol can mean that the blood is thick and sticky. But your cholesterol is not all bad. It has lots and lots of great functions. And there's lots of situations where we lower it too much, number one. And number two, where we lower it using medications, which is kind of like taking the fire alarm out of the burning building, right? So it doesn't mean that the building isn't still on fire. It just means we don't hear the alarm going off anymore. So, it's important to understand the role that cholesterol plays in our life and how it can be very useful. And then that helps us to understand what might not be happening when there is too much cholesterol in the system. So it's the building block of our hormones. Okay. So we want to ask questions like, well, why aren't we converting and utilizing this for our hormones as we should be? It surrounds toxins to decrease the impact. So maybe there's a situation that we need to clean out or reduce our toxic burden in our life. It helps keep the membranes of our veins and arteries and tissues nice and soft. So if there's a cholesterol problem, there are other problems as well. So just manipulating that number doesn't solve these other issues. It's not isolated. So taking a medication to manipulate your blood work doesn't address the underlying issue. Okay, so there's some things that you want to consider in these situations. Obviously, there's lots more that we can do with herbals and homeopathics and, lifestyle factors. And we're going to talk about some of those, and nutrition, and we're going to talk about some of that. But some other things that you want to consider is elimination. If your bowels aren't working right, because maybe there's fiber issues, water issues, healthy fat deficiencies, the body has to compensate by making more fat to surround the toxins to try to protect us. So this is one of the places where we try to tuck toxins away so that we can, because we can't eliminate it the proper way, so we store them in fat. We want to make sure that that isn't happening. Another issue can be a lack of antioxidants. This can also play a role, and these really help the liver to keep the blood clear of those free radicals. And without them, the body has to find another way to deal with the problem. We talked about toxic burden and, the toxicities in our lifestyle. There's some of it that we can't eliminate living in the day and age that we can, but there's definitely a lot that we do have power and control over. And there's definitely lots and lots of ways that we can lower that burden. And the more toxins we have in our life, the more we have in our food, the more overwhelmed and the more desperate the body gets to try to deal with that. So there's lots of opportunity for improvement there. Another concern is the lack of nutrients. So if we're eating lots of, I call them filler foods, foods without nutrients, foods that aren't nutrient dense, without the nutrients that we actually need, but they fill our belly for a short while anyway. Again, they turn off that fire alarm for a time, but then our organs don't have the resources that they need to do their jobs. So that's an issue that you would definitely want to address. Lack of activity. So sweating is an amazing way to get rid of toxins. So, and so many times you see not only not sweating, but trying to eliminate all the sweat in our life with things like antiperspirant deodorants. Okay, so instead of putting on antiperspirant deodorant, let's jump in a sauna, let's work out, let's encourage that sweat. This is something that needs to take place in order for our body to do what it needs to do well, and to the capacity that we need it to. Then we want to also consider our liver, our gallbladder, our spleen. These all play a role in cleaning out or storing our blood. Your liver makes 80% of the cholesterol that's in your blood. So we want to consider that. You know, it's not issues like, and they've figured out they had poor science, you know, when they told us to stop eating things like good, healthy butter. Not all butter is healthy, but healthy butter, and replace it with margarine, or stop eating egg yolks. And now we know that that was the wrong move to make. So, you know, instead of doing things like that to try to lower our cholesterol, maybe we should look a little bit more at the overload or the burden or the inability for some of these processes to be executed or fulfilled completely. Then we have things like poor breathing. So if the blood is thick and sticky, the ratio of oxygen is way too low. So we want to consider that. Breath work is huge. There's a great book that I've talked about many times called Breath by James Nestor. There's also one called The Oxygen Advantage. We talk about nitric oxide all the time, supplements. So, you know, this is something that is often definitely a concern in these situations. And then we have poor digestion. If you're eating really bad sources of protein, but you know, and you can't break it down, it becomes toxic. And this makes the situation worse. And it doesn't matter what you're eating, if your body can't break it down and utilize it, it's going to make all of these situations worse. So not just protein, but so there was a study that was recently done by Tulane University, and they found that statins prevent stem cells from performing their main function, which is mostly reproducing and replicating other cells in the body to carry out some of these repairs. So this is another area of concern, because when you're taking statin drugs, you want to understand that, you know, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And are you truly paying Paul? Because again, this isn't addressing the underlying issue. We have to understand that while medications might be necessary in certain situations, there is always a price to be paid. So in the long run, as this study found, it's impairing our ability to heal, okay? Our ability to reproduce and replicate cells in the body to carry out these repairs. That's a crucial piece in being able to heal and to sustain our health, or to even regain health. So there's lots of risks that are involved with statins, and you're going to see that in the study link. You know, let me put the study link in the comments here. Let's see. Good morning, Linda. Yes, I will put the books in the comments as well. Okay, there's the link to that study. And Breath by James Nestor is, not James Robb Restore, James Nestor. No, like auto tags people. Oh, I caught it. Okay. So, oh, it did it again. It really wants this person to be tagged in this comment. Okay, let's try it this way. Nope. Okay, I think it did. Yes, it did. Okay, I finally did it without tagging it. Okay, so that was Breath, and then the other one was the Oxygen Advantage. And I'm trying to think of the name of that author. Oh, it must be on one of my other shelves over there. So I don't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but that's the name of the other one that is very good too. You're welcome, Linda. It's nice to see you, even if it is only on here. Okay, so let's see, where were we at? So the links, the issues for statins, like I said, there's lots of issues involved there. In the study link, you're going to see that it talks about memory loss. It talks about myopathy, cataracts, diabetic risk. All that come from just taking this medication. So why not consider some alternative therapies, maybe in conjunction with, if there's a situation where you need to take the medication short term while you're working on addressing some of these other issues, or if it's not a serious situation, then you can, Patrick Holmes, is that the name of the author? I don't know, my brain was doing two things at one time. Welcome to the Gemini world. Anyway, so Patrick McKeown, McKeown, it's going to bug me now. Anyway, back to statins. Because taking the statin in and of itself isn't going to solve anything. So even if you decide that it is, work with your doctor and decide that it is necessary short term, doesn't mean that you can't still be working on some of these other areas to make sure that this is something that's necessary for the shortest time possible. Because when you take the medication, it doesn't actually solve any of the problems. You might feel better because your blood work came back different. You can, I don't want to say mess with, but you can, change how your brain associates from that perspective, but you can also do that in other ways too, that are actually accomplishing a little bit more in the process. So just keep, think about it this way. Are you actually accomplishing anything, or are you just trading this issue for 10 other issues because of what this will lead to long-term if you don't address it foundationally? So there's another study that you're going to find interesting. It's a 20-year study. It looked at the changes in cholesterol levels and the risk of death. They found, because what's one of the reasons that you want to lower your cholesterol? You don't want to die, and from this situation anyway. So they found that the lower the cholesterol, the higher the death risk. I'll put the link to that study in here too. That is a very interesting one to see. These are all PubMed. So they found that the higher the cholesterol as we age, it actually is protective, is what they found. And this was a 20-year study, guys. So it's not like this is something that they just threw together overnight, right? So cholesterol, because it can help your body heal, because it can protect you against infection, because it can protect you against cancer. Keep in mind what I said about how it plays a role in protecting us from toxins, how it can support hormone production, how it does regulate our blood pressure, how it helps our brain function. All these things need cholesterol as an ingredient. And when we drop cholesterol too low, all of these functions are impaired, which is what feeds into the risk for some of these other side effects. So now let's say it is truly at an unhealthy level. What are some ways that we can manage it naturally? Well, first, we know that what we eat, like I mentioned, doesn't necessarily directly increase our cholesterol, but our diet and lifestyle can impair functions that utilize our cholesterol. Okay, this is where it's important, leaving way to having too much lying around and not being used, which is an issue as well. So we don't want that. So that's how diet and lifestyle can impact it. And eliminating things like egg yolks and healthy butter and things like that is not the diet and lifestyle adjustments that we need to make to accomplish this goal. So it's very important to keep that in mind. So it can improve our cholesterol levels from that perspective, not by reducing the cholesterol that we eat, but by addressing our overall nutrition and lifestyle, doing things like our Reset to Thrive program. That can be a really big help here. And you won't have the deficiencies that things like statins will cause that lead to more meds, more deficiencies and all that kind of stuff. So A site that I love to use all the time is a site called Mitavit. If you haven't seen this site and you're on medications or you're considering going on medications, you should definitely, please explore this site. Now, I don't know, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe, they did a revamp to their site and they took a lot of the medications that were in their site, they took it out. They took them out. We can speculate all day long why that happened, but the number of medications that is in here is greatly reduced. And they've said over the years, since they've done this, that, oh, well, it just takes time to load them all back in. Whatever the reason, it's the case. But thankfully, there are still many medications that are in there. So the first one I'm gonna put in as a link in there is a very popular statin that I have people come to me often that are on. And when you click on that link, you can pull this up and expand some of the information that's there, okay? And you're gonna see actually, you know what? I'm gonna share my screen. Let me do that so that you guys can see this as an example. Here we go. Share. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen right now. So this is the link that I just posted in the comments. So we're going to go through it together. So we know that there's a study that was done in 2005 that shows that it will create a copper deficiency. Statin treatment was associated with significant reduction in mean serum copper. Now, the previous site, it also used to give, okay, well, what does that mean? Why do we care about being deficient in copper? And it used to give the symptoms that would create, okay? And that was great. That was very helpful for people to understand how this creates side effects, okay? But they no longer do that either. Anyway, so you can definitely, search copper deficiency and the symptoms that are associated with that. I like that they used to do it on this site because obviously, you can get all kinds of information from Google, where at least this was more reliable. But they don't do it anymore, so we have to rely on other means. So copper deficiency. Now, zinc and copper have to be in a delicate balance in the body. Okay, so that's why we don't want to supplement high doses of copper, and copper IUDs can be an issue. We also don't want to supplement high doses of zinc because it's going to offset our copper. And copper is very difficult for our body to replace because it's not found in our foods the way that it used to be. So, and you'll see at the bottom, zinc is listed here as one of the deficiencies it will cause too. So in addition to reducing serum total with low density lipoprotein, LDL cholesterol, this was associated with a significant reduction in mean serum zinc, copper, and then other things there too. So, so this is actually, is this the same study? Yeah, it's the same study that was done in 2005, so zinc and copper. So these are vital minerals. I just saw here too, don't mean to make you nauseous with the scrolling up and down, but selenium. Selenium is very important for your heart health. Without selenium, you are at a very high risk of heart attacks. Okay, cardiovascular illness, which is one of the things you're probably trying to eliminate with taking a statin, right? So this was a 9-year follow-up. Selenium declines were observed in all the subgroups, despite the plasma selenium levels being higher, and so on and so forth. And you can read through that. That was done in that was found in 2009. So the risk of selenium, considering the risk of selenium deficiency in the elderly and its relationship to poor health status, further clinical trials needed to verify the proposed hypotheses. So selenium, again, is another mineral that's not found in many foods, and it's hard to replace. So Brazil nuts, soaked overnight and dehydrated, can be a good source of selenium, and there's some other foods there too. CoQ10, this is huge. If a doctor puts you on a statin drug and does not address the need for CoQ10, which will also lead to cardiovascular issues, and the risk without CoQ, this actually used to say in there, the risk without CoQ10 or of a CoQ10 deficiency will lead to heart attack risk. There's only so much information they want you to have anymore, and things are very, very widely filtered these days. So, lots of this information has been removed, but thankfully we do have other sources. It just takes a little bit more work to find the information, unfortunately. So low CoQ10 is a big, big, big deal. And you can see there's lots of information. There's lots of studies that show that it will create that deficiency. We know hands down, if it doesn't do it right away, depending on your diet and your lifestyle and other factors, it will do this and it will put you at risk for a heart attack. And that's not something that should be taken lightly. And you can go through and read through this. So there's another statin that I find to be very common. I'll put the link to that one, simvastatin. In there, and you can go to Mydovan yourself, and like I said, and you can type in any medication. Hopefully they have all the ones that you're looking for, but if not, yes, the CoQ10 is essential. So that's simvastatin, which again is another really common one that lots of people are on. So managing this through diet and lifestyle is definitely a better way. It's an effective way. It's extremely effective. And it's something that can be done long term. And in doing it that way, you're addressing all of these other concerns, okay? And preventing other health issues instead of creating more health issues. So, and you can add in supplemental support, we can add in herbals, we can add in, we have some amazing supplements available to us now. I don't want to say technology, but the information that we have as to how to support these processes has grown so much. We have great, great tools out there. There's so much that can be utilized. So again, whether you feel the need to do that short term, or your doctor said we have to do this short term, while you're working on the other factors, fine. Or if you want to utilize this as tools to prevent, then all the better. So reach out if you need help, if you have questions, share this with your friends and family that have a concern in this area, because this can be a big deal. See you again soon, guys.